It's kind of strange when you think about it. Every spring, millions of people head out into their backyards and start pulling weeds. We spray them, bag them up, and throw them away without giving them a second thought. And yet, a lot of those same plants were once used by our grandparents and by traditional cultures around the world long before modern antibiotics even existed. And these weeds, some of them, have also been studied in peer-reviewed pharmacological journals for compounds with real antimicrobial activity against some of the same bacteriophora that our antibiotics are starting to struggle with. So today, I thought we'd go through 15 of them together. Some you'll recognize immediately, and a few you may have pulled out just this week. I will also show you how to use them, but please pick only one that fits your specific situation. Don't try to use all of them at once. One thing before we start, this video is educational. It's not medical advice. Talk to your naturopathic doctor before using any of these as a complete substitute for prescribed antibiotics. All right, let's get into it. Number 1, yarrow, Achillea millefolium. You see, the name Achillea comes from the legend that Achilles used this plant to treat the wounds of his soldiers in the Trojan War. That story is thousands of years old. The medicinal use is older than that. Yarrow grows in almost every temperate backyard, garden edge, and grassy verge in the world. Feathery leaves, flat-topped clusters of small white or pale yellow flowers. Most people pull it out without a second thought. The research is solid. Studies show yarrow extracts inhibit biofilm formation in Staphylococcus aureus, the bacteria behind skin infections and the notoriously resistant Mr. Biofilm is the protective coating bacteria build to hide from antibiotics. Yarrow breaks it down. It's also effective against Helicobacter pylori, the bacteria behind most stomach ulcers, including antibiotic-resistant strains. Active compounds include luteolin, apigenin, and volatile terpenes, including camphor and borneol. To make use of it, you can apply fresh yarrow leaves applied directly to a wound. As a field poultice, it is one of the oldest uses. Bruise the leaves first. You can also drink it as a tea, steep dried leaves and flowers for 10 minutes, and then drink it. Yarrow is also one of those plants where the whole aerial part, leaves, stem, flowers, is medicinally active. Number 2, plantain, Plantago major and Plantago lanceolata, broadleaf plantain, not the banana. The low, flat weed with oval-ribbed leaves that grows in every compacted lawn and path edge you've ever walked past. The Saxons called it one of their 9 sacred herbs. It was considered so universally useful that it was deliberately taken with colonists to new lands. Plantain contains aucubin, actioside, and allantoin, which promotes cell regeneration. Studies confirm antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, and astringent properties. It's been specifically studied for wound healing because it both kills surface bacteria and promotes new tissue growth simultaneously. That dual action is genuinely unusual. How to use it? Chew a fresh leaf briefly and then apply directly to wounds or insect bites, a spit poultice, and it works. It can also be used as a tea for respiratory infections. Use young leaves because they are edible, slightly bitter, but nutritious. Number 3, self-heal, Prunella vulgaris. This one's name literally tells you what it does. Prunella vulgaris. Small purple-lipped flowers growing in dense whorled spikes, low to the ground. You've almost certainly walked over it. It grows in lawns, in shaded edges, in pathsides. It's one of the most overlooked plants in the temperate world. Modern studies show antiviral activity against herpes simplex, HSV-1 and HSV-2, HIV, and influenza. The antimicrobial range is broad. The polysaccharide fraction stimulates the immune system directly. It contains rosmarinic acid, shared with rosemary and sage, ursolic acid, betulinic acid, and rutin. It was historically called carpenter's herb because it was used for cuts and bruised fingers in workshops. The idea being, if you get hurt, there's probably some self-heal growing nearby that can help you, which is true almost anywhere. How to use it? You can use fresh leaves on wounds. You can take the tea for throat infections and respiratory illness. A weak infusion as a mouthwash or eye wash has reliable antiseptic effect. Number 4, goldenrod, Solidago canadensis, Solidago gigantea, goldenrod. The tall, yellow-flowered plant that people constantly and wrongly blame for hay fever, that's usually ragweed, not goldenrod. Goldenrod has heavy pollen that doesn't travel in the air. It gets a lot of blame it doesn't deserve. And it gets pulled out of gardens constantly. Recent research found Solidago extracts rich in flavonoids and phenolics, chlorogenic acid and rutin, with strong antibacterial activity against Staphylococcus aureus, including antibiotic-resistant strains, and fungistatic activity against Fusarium species. This is not a marginal plant medicinally. Goldenrod has a long history for urinary tract infections and upper respiratory infections. The antimicrobial, diuretic, and anti-inflammatory properties work together well. To use it, you can take dried flowers and leaves as a tea, steeped 15 minutes. It is one of the better backyard herbs for urinary infections, as a tincture for longer-term use. Quick pause. If you're finding this useful, drop a like, and let me know in the comments which of these you've pulled out of your yard recently. I guarantee most people have already removed at least 2 or 3 of these this month. Back to it. Number 5, dandelion. Taraxacum officinale. Dandelion. But hear me out, because most people know dandelion is good for something, and then can't explain much beyond that. The antimicrobial side of this plant is genuinely worth understanding. Dandelion contains taraxacin, taraxacerin, luteolin, and chicoric acid. Research shows antimicrobial activity against Staphylococcus aureus, Bacillus subtilis, and Candida albicans, the fungal pathogen behind most yeast infections. The whole plant is medicinally active, but different parts are used differently. The root supports liver function, which processes and clears bacterial toxins. The leaves are a potent diuretic that doesn't deplete potassium like pharmaceutical diuretics. The flowers contain luteolin, one of the more studied anti-inflammatory compounds. How to use it? You can use young leaves in salads or as a bitter green in cooking. Root roasted and brewed as a coffee substitute or medicinal decoction. Drink the flower as tea for anti-inflammatory effect, or the whole plant as a tincture. Dandelions is genuinely one of the most versatile medicinal plants growing anywhere. Number 6, chickweed, Stellaria media. This is the soft, low-growing, almost delicate-looking weed with tiny white flowers that appears in gardens in cooler months. If you've tried to grow anything in a vegetable patch over winter, you've definitely had chickweed spreading across it. Most people rake it off. It has a good nutritional profile and well-documented antimicrobial properties for a plant that looks this unassuming. Studies confirm activity against Staphylococcus aureus and antifungal activity. The saponin content and flavonoids are responsible for the antimicrobial effect. Its biggest traditional application is topical. Chickweed is particularly well regarded for skin infections, rashes, eczema, and burns. It has a cooling anti-inflammatory effect on skin. The fresh plant applied as a poultice draws out infection and reduces inflammation simultaneously. To make use of it, you can use fresh plant as a poultice for infected skin, one of the genuinely reliable topical antimicrobials. As a tea steep, fresh or dried leaves in hot water for 10 to 15 minutes respiratory infections and digestive support. Also, young shoots are edible raw, mild flavor. Number 7, Cleaver's Galium aperine. It can also be called goosegrass or sticky weed, the plant that clings to your trousers when you walk through long grass, the one with the little sticky burrs that attach to everything. You've definitely pulled this off your clothes at some point. Cleavers supports the lymphatic system, the body's internal drainage and immune surveillance network. When you get an infection, your lymph nodes swell. Cleavers helps move that lymphatic fluid and reduces the stagnation that allows infections to persist. The antimicrobial properties come from its iridoid glycoside content and tannins. It has direct antibacterial effects against gram-positive bacteria and has been used specifically for skin infections, swollen glands, and urinary tract infections, the lymphatic action and the antibacterial action working together. The fresh plant juice is considered the most potent form. How to use it? You can take them as fresh juice. Blend fresh them with purified water and drink. As a tea, steep 1-2 teaspoons of dried cleavers for 10 minutes. Young growth is also edible. Mild flavored good in salads. Number 8, ground ivy, Glechoma heteracea, ground ivy. Creeping Charlie. This is the low-growing aromatic weed with scalloped leaves and tiny purple flowers that spreads across garden beds and lawn edges. It has a distinctive, sharp, herbal smell when you crush it. Slightly minty, slightly bitter. A lot of people consider it one of the most invasive weeds they deal with. Ground ivy contains rosmarinic acid, luteolin, apigenin, and ursolic acid. Documented antibacterial and antifungal properties. Historically used for respiratory infections, sinus congestion, and ear infections. The volatile antimicrobial compounds have real local antiseptic action. It was brewed as an ale before hops became the standard, partly for preservation, which tells you something about its antimicrobial properties. To use it, you can steep a handful of fresh or dried leaves in boiling water for 10-12 minutes as a tea for respiratory and sinus infections. Also, a strong infusion inhaled as a steam is particularly effective for sinus congestion. You can apply fresh leaves to skin infections. You can also use chopped fresh leaves to enhance flavors in sauces, eggs, and meats. Number 9, purple dead nettle, Lamium purpureum. So, purple dead nettle. And let me tell you, despite the name, this is not a stinging plant at all. The dead in dead nettle means the sting is dead, absent. It looks vaguely like a nettle with its squared stem and opposite leaves, but it's harmless to touch. It grows in garden beds, lawns, and disturbed soil from early spring through to summer. It has documented antifungal and antimicrobial properties, specifically active against Candida albicans, the fungal pathogen behind thrush and yeast infections, and has anti-allergenic, antihistamine properties. High iron content supports immune function beyond its direct antimicrobial action. How to use it? Young leaves and flowers edible, mild flavored, good in salads or soups. You can also steep dried leaves as a tea. Also used as a tincture combined with other antifungal herbs for systemic yeast infections. Number 10, shepherd's purse, Capsella bursa-pastoris, so shepherd's purse. The weed with the small heart-shaped seed pods that look like tiny purses. It is common in vegetable gardens, path edges, and any disturbed soil. One of the most widespread plants on Earth, it grows on every continent except Antarctica. The antimicrobial properties come from isothiocyanates, the same class of compounds in mustard and horseradish, with broad spectrum activity against bacteria and fungi, tested against Staphylococcus aureus, E. coli, and Candida albicans with positive results. Shepherd's purse has a particular historical reputation for stopping bleeding, hemostatic action, that is well supported by research. It contains compounds that contract blood vessels and promote clotting. This makes it useful for wound care specifically. Stop the bleeding and kill surface bacteria at the same time. Use 1 to 2 teaspoons of dried or fresh shepherd's purse, leaves, stems, and flowers per cup of boiling water and steep for 10 minutes as tea for urinary infections. Use poultice for wounds, especially wounds still bleeding, widely used in traditional Chinese medicine as jisai. Still with me? Good. The last 5 are honestly the ones most people have never considered in this context. Drop a comment on which one surprises you most. Number 11, wood sorrel, Oxalis acidocella, a 3-leafed, clover-like plant with small yellow or white flowers. Has a sharp, sour taste. That's oxalic acid, the same compound that gives spinach its bite. Grows in damp, shaded areas under hedges in woodland edges, often mistaken for clover. The oxalic acid creates a low pH environment that inhibits bacterial growth. It also contains isovitexin and other flavonoids with antibacterial and anti-inflammatory activity, and has been shown active against Staphylococcus aureus, E. coli, and Aspergillus niger. It was used historically for fevers as a diuretic, and for mouth and throat infections where its acidity and astringency combine to create a local antimicrobial effect. The fresh plant chewed slowly releases the active compounds directly onto throat and mouth surfaces. You can use small amounts of fresh leaves in salads. As a tea for fever and throat infections, steep the fresh leaves in boiling water for 10-15 minutes to create a tart, lemony tea. Don't consume wood sorrel in large quantities. The oxalic acid is an issue in high doses. Small, regular amounts is better. Number 12, hairy bittercress, Cardamine hirsuta. This is the tiny rosette weed that springs up in plant pots and garden beds in late winter and early spring. The one with small white flowers that shoots its seeds across the garden when you touch it. Gardeners find it incredibly frustrating because of how quickly it seeds and spreads. It's Brassicaceae. That's the same family as broccoli and mustard, and shares the glucosinolates compounds that break down to isothiocyanates when crushed. They inhibit bacterial enzyme systems and have been shown active against Staphylococcus aureus, Listeria, and E. coli. The leaves are peppery and bitter, genuinely good flavor for a weed. They can be used directly as food, which means this is one of those weeds where eating it is actually the primary application. You can eat fresh young leaves raw as a food, good in salads and sandwiches, genuinely better tasting than most of the weeds on this list. As a poultice for skin infections, as a tea for mild antimicrobial support, steep a few leaves for 10 mintus. This is more of a nutritional antimicrobial than a therapeutic herb. The key is consistent, regular consumption. Number 13, Herb Robert, Geranium robertianum. Herb Robert, the distinctive reddish-stemmed, strongly aromatic geranium that grows in shaded walls, rocky ground, and garden edges. Strong smell. Some people like it, some don't. The whole plant is covered in fine sticky hairs. Small pink 5-petaled flowers. It turns bright red in autumn, which is how you identify it in the cold months. Herb Robert contains geranium, a tannin with documented antiviral, antibacterial, and antioxidant properties, shown active against herpes simplex and both gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria. Long history of use for wounds and skin infections in European folk medicine. How to use it? You can use fresh plant as a poultice for infected wounds and skin conditions. As a tea, steep 1 to 2 teaspoons of fresh or dried leaves and flowering tops in a cup of boiling water for 10-15 minutes, packed with antibacterial and antiviral properties. The strongly aromatic fresh plant also works as a topical insect repellent when rubbed on skin. Number 14, sow thistle, Sonchus soleraceus. The soft-spined thistle-like plant with hollow stems that produces a milky white sap when broken. Grows fast, flowers yellow, sets seed quickly. One of those weeds that seems to appear overnight in vegetable gardens. Unlike true thistles, the spines are soft and don't hurt. The milky white sap contains sesquiterpene lactones with documented antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory properties. Studies found activity against Staphylococcus aureus, E. coli, and Candida albicans. The sap has been used topically for skin infections and warts across multiple traditional medicine systems globally. Sow thistle is also highly nutritious. The young leaves are edible and were commonly eaten as a vegetable throughout European history. They're rich in vitamins A and C, calcium, and iron. A food plant, a medicine, and a weed simultaneously. Young leaves can be cooked as greens, sauté them like spinach. Fresh sap applied topically to warts, infected skin, and insect bites. As a tea for mild antimicrobial support, you can steep the fresh leaves and flowers in boiling water for 10 minutes. The latex specifically is worth knowing about for topical skin infections. Number 15, wild garlic mustard, Alearia petiolata, and we end with garlic mustard, Alearia petiolata. This one's interesting because it's considered an invasive species in North America. It spreads aggressively through woodland edges and disturbed ground and is actively managed in some areas. Heart-shaped leaves, white flowers, and when you crush the leaves, they smell distinctly of garlic. That's the allicin compounds, the same antimicrobial chemicals that make garlic so potent. Garlic mustard contains sinigrin, which breaks down to allyl isothiocyanate with strong broad-spectrum antimicrobial activity. The allicin-related compounds add a secondary mechanism. Research confirms antibacterial activity against E. coli, Staphylococcus aureus, and Salmonella. The flavor is exactly what the name suggests: garlic and mustard simultaneously, with a slight bitterness, mild peppery. The young leaves in spring before flowering are the best. Tender, less bitter, more aromatic. They're genuinely good as a food plant, not just medicinal. Young leaves can be chopped raw into salads, added to pesto instead of basil, stirred into soups at the end of cooking. You can steep fresh or dried garlic mustard leaves in boiling water as a tea for antimicrobial effect. You can also blend the leaves into green smoothies or fresh juices, also used as a poultice. If you're in North America and it's growing on your property, you're in luck. So that's the list. 15 ordinary weeds that most of us have been taught to get rid of, but maybe deserve a second look. So before you pull out that next weed, maybe take a moment and ask yourself, what exactly am I throwing away? Thanks for spending some time with me today. And if you already have one of these growing in your yard, I'd love to hear which one it is. Subscribe, like if you enjoyed the video, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.